All right, let's talk about one of the most complex places you can possibly imagine, the classroom. Today, we're going to try and crack its secret code. Because what if the key to better learning isn't some new teaching trick, but a totally new way of seeing?
Okay, let's kick things off with this quote from Etienne Wenger. And wow, it's a bombshell. Think about this. Learning and teaching are not inherently linked. Just because you're up there teaching doesn't mean anyone is actually learning. And that forces us to ask a really big question.
So, if just standing at the front of the room and talking isn't the whole picture, what is? What's that invisible thing, that secret ingredient that makes one lesson click while another one just fizzles out? While the answer seems to lie in seeing the classroom not just as a place where you give instructions, but as its own unique culture with its own secret code. I mean, think about it. When a new teacher walks into a classroom, especially mid-year, they are a total outsider. That room already has a history, it has shared jokes, it has established hierarchies, and a ton of unspoken rules. They're trying to lead a social system they don't even understand yet. And this is where it gets really interesting, right? You see the gap here between what a new teacher sees and what's actually happening. They'll notice the surface level stuff, the walls are blue, it's a fun place. But what they're totally missing are the invisible currents running underneath, the routines, the shared values, who talks to who, all the stuff that really matters. If you miss that, you're basically just talking into the wind.
So how do you learn to see what's invisible? How do you actually crack that secret code? Well, you need a new set of tools. You have to start thinking less like an instructor and a whole lot more like an anthropologist.
And this is the big mindset shift right here. Before you can really teach inside a culture, you've got to understand it. That means taking a step back from the lesson plan and starting with just observation, with asking questions, and with a real curiosity about the social world your students live in every single day.
This approach actually has a name. It's called classroom ethnography. It's a whole field of research that's all about studying the culture of the classroom. It's looking at the social dynamics, the communication patterns, and what the students themselves think, all to understand how learning really happens.
So what does this look like in practice? A study by Mark Giroud and his colleagues had student teachers follow this simple but really powerful four-step process. First, just observe and take notes. Then, and this is key, film the classroom. Get it on video so you have an objective record. Third, you go back and analyze that footage, looking for those hidden patterns. And finally, you use what you found to build a real action plan to teach better. Simple, but pretty powerful. And you know what these teachers discovered when they started looking through this new lens? They started seeing all the things that were right there in front of them the whole time, but were basically invisible before. And hey, this isn't just some clever idea. It's a real field of academic study with a long history, as you can see from this paper. But the real power of it, well, it comes to life in the stories from the teachers who actually tried it. Let's look at a couple of examples. Oh, poor Justin. You gotta feel for him. He just walks right into a cultural landmine. Turns out the mentor teacher had already explained the word Seminole before, and it became this huge inside joke for the class, a joke Justin was completely left out of. It's kind of funny, but it's also a perfect example of how a teacher can feel like a total outsider in their own classroom. And then there's Isabella. She ran into a totally different kind of cultural barrier, a big clash of values. Her mentor teacher had built a classroom culture where free expression was way more important than perfect spelling and punctuation. So when Isabella came in and unknowingly violated that core value, the students pushed back hard. She wasn't just grading papers, she was breaking a cultural norm. So these little aha moments are incredibly powerful. But what happens when these insights go beyond just preventing embarrassment and actually start to transform how students learn? Let's dive into 2 case studies where that exact thing happened.
So first up, we've got Larry. He was a student teacher in a PE class, and he had a theory about what was going wrong in this class. But as you'll see, the video told a very different story. Larry was convinced the issue was just negative competition between the kids. But when he went back and watched the video footage, he noticed something else entirely. The school's star football player wasn't really participating. He was napping, sitting out, and that behavior was setting a tone that kind of discouraged everyone else. This just shows you how hard data can completely shatter our assumptions.
Okay, so here's the crucial part. Armed with this new insight, Larry totally redesigned his activities to make sure they encouraged equity and full engagement from everyone. The results? They were dramatic. Suddenly,
Everyone was more involved, especially second language learners who had been kind of passive before. And he had the data to prove it. Participation grades went up across the board.
All right, our second case is Chelsea, a science teacher. Now, she walked in with a pretty common assumption about the gender dynamics in her classroom.
Chelsea was absolutely convinced that the boys were dominating every discussion and the girls were just passive. But the video, it revealed the complete opposite. The girls were actually super engaged, asking really thoughtful questions. The real problem was a few boys who were constantly being disruptive, and it was drowning out all the productive learning that was trying to happen. Her entire theory was flipped on its head.
So instead of trying to encourage the girls more, she totally shifted her focus to managing the disruptive behavior from the boys. And the effect was immediate. The whole class became more engaged, and she literally watched two girls in particular just start to blossom. And get this, their test scores improved. That is a direct line from this ethnographic insight to measurable academic success.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? I mean, the stories of Larry, Chelsea, and all the other teachers in this study, they point to a much deeper way of thinking about how we train teachers.
The results of this study were unanimous. 100%, all 43 teachers who did this, reported that this process made them more knowledgeable about the unique culture and demands of their specific classroom, every single one.
And that really gets to the heart of it all. Effective teaching might be less about having the perfect lesson plan, a script to follow, and more about having the right perceptual tools to see and respond to the classroom culture as it truly is. The goal isn't to give teachers a list of techniques, it's to educate their perception.
And that really leaves us with one last big question to chew on. In this whole era of standardization and testing, what do we actually value more? Are we training teachers to just be technicians, following a script? Or are we training them to be these perceptive, anthropologists who can actually read the room? The answer to that question, it could change everything.